The cowboy culture, of course, is how we're connected to the land. It's that embodiment that we're losing sight of more and more nowadays. That living embodied life where we're connected to the animals, the land, and to one another.
What the saddle represents probably depends on your perspective. The saddle really is the most representative piece of gear related to the cowboy.
What's the significance of a saddle and what does it do? The saddle was the main thing that got created, that where one could travel a long distance. You're not just sitting on a horse bareback, you actually could do something. It allowed the person riding that horse to complete a task.
It's this cowboy culture. It's the culture of the North American West. When I think about my great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, when they came out, they had nothing and there was no promises, right? They came out to build a life. But it wasn't about them. But it was about moving it ahead to the next generation, right? They want to build something that can be kept.
One of the key features of a well-built saddle is you have to start with the foundation, which is your tree. We were very kind to get the gentleman donated this tree, but then he had learned how to build some trees from Chuck Storms. And so that foundation was there. I think that, and then I think the next thing you have to have is materials. All the TCAA members collaborated in building the hardware for this saddle. And then we were very gracious that Herman Oak Leather donated the leather for this saddle, you know, that was very kind to them. And then it becomes the skill of the people who handle the knives. You know, you can have the best piece of leather, you can have the best tree, but you have to have the hands and the knowledge in those hands to create it and put it together.
Good morning, gentlemen.
I'd have been here earlier, but I couldn't get out of the bakery.
Most of the good saddle makers that I know are mainly self-taught.
This'll work.
They may have got some of the basics from a job as an apprentice like I did.
I just lined the edges up.
But mostly we're self-taught.
You gonna hold the font?
Yeah, we got to roll the front.
The narrative that we're trying to get across, the story that we're trying to tell, has to do fundamentally with the values of the cowboy culture, and that is hard work and a certain amount of rugged individualism, but not taken to an absurdity, so that we're relying on community. With this build, you could say it's kind of almost like a microcosm of this narrative that we're talking about. A man has to know his limitations. Okay, where do I begin and where do I end? Where does my neighbor begin and end? And so we have our designated roles in this build.
Hold that for me, please.
That's a big part of how ranch country, farm country is operated from day one. It was a concerted effort among many different components to make this well-oiled machine hopefully work well in a sustainable way.
I think the next thing you have to have is materials. All the TCAA members collaborated in building the hardware for this saddle.
This line here you got is the ground seat or the top of the bars?
I think the fun part was, you know, we have all worked before together, and so that was helpful.
We're around, so that's okay. Line up there.
But there are 4 different personalities and 4 different styles, and it was like, what are you doing?
So how you treat this deal now? Man, they do everything backward, those guys. There's lots of, we call this grunt work, which is common labor, don't require much skills. Yeah, maybe a little bit different, but still really good. Cut lining, glue the lining, edge, rub the edge slick, and all kind of stuff like that. Put the tapaderos together, which is shaping, pulling tanks together. I did the grunt work, with not by myself. We were a few guys doing the same thing. The function for me is the main idea of the saddle. After many years, you organize, you cut this and this and this, like a little bit like a house. You start with a foundation and this and that. And each piece is put together to the absolute best possible before the next one comes on and overlap. If you get a problem, the problem amplify itself, don't reduce itself. So you make sure you assemble those pieces the best as possible on each step.
Most roping saddles, competition saddles, even working cowboy saddles had metal horns in, especially in Texas. And then the further north you get, the more wood post horns are what most of the northern saddle makers have covered. So I've covered tons of, I've made hundreds of roping saddles and covered hundreds of metal horns. So I was selected to cover the horn on this saddle was the first thing I did. Then as the saddle progressed, everything on the saddle was lined, as meaning you take a lighter weight piece of leather and glue it to the heavier piece of leather. So all the fenders were lined, stirrup leathers were lined, seat jockeys were lined, housings were lined. I spread most all the glue on all of that and glued the pieces together, then Cary sewed it. And then I would trim the excess leather off the back of each piece. We would edge the edges, which means there's a tool called an edger, which takes the squared edge to a round edge, because round edges are softer and more comfortable just for the feel. And then we rub all the edges. Basically anything that needed doing is kind of what we fell in line and did. I marvel that I make a living using the same tools they used 100 years ago. We take a saddle of leather, we take a round knife, which is a knife shaped like a half moon with a handle on it. It's razor sharp. We cut it out by hand. We fit each part to the tree by hand. And we trim each part by hand. I mean, custom saddle making is simply using hand tools.
When you're flower carving, I think you have to start, it starts with the pencil. And you have to start with an idea of what you like to do. When you flower carve with your tooling, you have to think about, your first thing is your moisture content in your leather. Then as you have the different tools, there is a process. There are tools you start with, there are tools that you finish with. I was thinking about how I had to honor Chuck Storms' work and the early California guys' work, and that was really important to me to use those simple tools, the tools that didn't complicate the pattern anymore.
My name's Jay Adcock. I live in Pawhuska, Oklahoma, Osage County, and I braid rawhide for a living. It's always intrigued me that you could skin a cow, just a few I've got, cure the hide, make your own rawhide, and make a serviceable tool out of it. There's a lot more to making a rieta than just braiding 4 strings of rawhide.
My name's Troy Flayhardy. I'm a bit and spur maker. The most important part, in my opinion, is functionality. It doesn't matter how great your engraving is or how great your silver work is. If the bit doesn't function, it's really worthless. The classic styles of California bits, they lend themselves to art. So for the anniversary saddle, I made a pair of rigging rings, big 4-inch O-rings. The great thing about the TCAA is the accountability. Like, I have 12 other guys pushing me to be my best, so I don't want to let them down.
I think Visalia to the saddle makers is a large part of our history and our traditions, and so a tribute back to an ode, a hats off to the Visalia and what they've done for us moving forward in our contemporary world. I made a rope strap buckle for the saddle. I'm the steel guy. I keep it all together.
My name is Pablo Lozano. I'm born in Argentina, Buenos Aires, Argentina. Rawhide braider, made the ring, and I made the braid and the hobbles.
Name's Leland Hensley. I'm a rawhide braider from Meridian, Texas. I did hobble ring for the saddle.
The great thing about silver is it's soft enough. You can move it, you can mold it, shape it, and it really is an easy metal to design in.
The word craftsman and artist are the same word to me. I mean, you got to be a craftsman before you're an artist. Every one of these guys is an artist. And the fact, that collaboration to do it, every member worked on it. So it didn't matter how big or small it was, it's a collaboration. Well, doesn't that speak to the West? The rural people still have to work together to survive. If you can take a group like this and work together, it's going to elevate the trade. If I lived 3 lifetimes, I could never learn everything I could do with silver. It's an amazing material. Silver to me is just intoxicating.
Why do I do what I do? I love it. I love it. I still love it. It's fun. I look forward to people call me up and order selling. Man, I'm looking forward to building that. I think it's important to love what you do and do what you love.